How is Perry Thompson feeling about his spring showing? And we're going to talk more quarterbacks.
In the world full of podcasts, he's the undisputed heavyweight champion of hot takes, an Auburn sports homer, master of the boog, and message board legend. Get your buttons buttoned and your hats flattened because the Top Button Podcast is about to kick off. And you don't want to miss your courtside seat. Now, here's your host, Charlie Five.
Yes, sir. We're back. It's another episode of the Top Button Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Rush, a.k.a. Charlie Five, and we are ready to get after it. Happy Monday for everybody that jumped on the live last night. We appreciate it. Going to clarify a few things from the live last night, and we're going to look at some of the clips from Hugh's press conference. I got four in particular. We're going to talk Perry Thompson. We're going to talk only having two quarterbacks for spring, Deuce's spring, and then are we going to look to bring in another quarterback in the portal? A lot of fun. We'll get at after all that here in just a second. But before we do that, you know we got to give a shout out to Uncle Keith's Red Sauce. Go to unclekeithsredsauce.com. Use coupon code TheBarn25 to take 25% off your order. I've been seeing comments. I just saw one in the last video that someone finally found it at their local Publix. Hey, get after Publix. If they don't have it on the shelf, you got to get after it. If you live in the state of Alabama, they're supposed to have it. So if you live close to one in the state of Alabama, you can find it there. If you can't, go online, buy it in bulk. Just go ahead and stack it up and save. You're going to want it for a rainy day anyway. If you love salsa and you want to try it with a Southern kick, Uncle Keith's Red Sauce is for you. Go to unclekeithsredsauce.com. It's good, y'all. Last night we talked the spring game with Zach and Daryl. I was not there. I was doing dad duties. I was a cheer dad for the weekend. So I missed the action, but I tried to get caught up with all the notes that they posted in the barnauburn.com. And then we reviewed the whole game last night. And there was a commenter that mentioned that they were concerned about some of Hugh's comments about Perry and redshirting. And I want to clarify that. I want to play the clip and see what, and then kind of break it down. Hugh was asked basically, how is Perry feeling about his spring, after he didn't play a ton, basically he didn't play a ton last year, had a big spring. How's Perry feeling? Okay. And then here's what Hugh had to say.
Perry's a hard one to read. And, we've had several talks, and I've talked to him about, hey, Van Jefferson red-shirted, DK Metcalf red-shirted, and didn't. Now, part of his was due to an injury, but there's been many that don't just you're not just ready-made. There's a process to this for most people in this league, and man, just be patient with the process. And I think he's starting to see the success that comes with that. And as long as he continues to be consistent in his efforts, he's talented enough to be a real good weapon for us. And I think you saw that today in some of the contested catches he made in the Skelly period.
When I first heard this or read this, actually, I thought it was strange because it seemed unprompted. And then when you put it all into context, it makes perfect sense. I think it was Justin Ferguson asked him, how Perry's feeling. And Hugh said, hey, he's tough to read. It's tough to know sometimes. And we always have to reassure him that I believe Perry probably thought last year he was going to come in and have Cam Coleman numbers. And Hugh saying, we had to tell him, look, these two guys, DK Metcalf, Van Jefferson, these are guys that were unbelievable wide receivers. And even they didn't have the freshman seasons that they redshirted. You actually played a little bit, they redshirted. I think the way it was presented in some articles and things like that, maybe thought that they were talking about possibly redshirting this year. And I don't think that's the case based off listening to that. I think it's just, hey, look, Perry came from Foley High School. They've had success, but when he was there, he's not running very complex routes. He's the best player on the team. It's just, hey, let's get it to him in space. Let's throw it to him deep. not having to really read defenses very much, it's not super complicated. I'm the best athlete on the field. Just get me the ball. And he's stepping into an offense where there's a lot of decisions to be made. There's a lot of reads to be made. And you and the quarterback have to be on the same page. And the coach has to trust you that you can be on the same page with the quarterback, that you're going to make the right decisions. And that takes time. And remember, Perry also came in the summer. He didn't come in the winter, that early enrollee. So he was that much far behind. And then the system he played in high school, he was that much further behind. So it's no surprise that it's taken a little bit of there's been an acclimation period. But I think what Hugh's saying is, look, if he stays in a good mindset and he keeps working, he's going to be a really good weapon. And you saw it on display that he's got the ability. He's just got to be patient. Preaching patience to these kids nowadays is another recruiting aspect that you have to add, put on your recruiting tool belt. They want it now. And I'm not saying Perry is that guy, but I'm sure he thought probably he was going to be a little bit further along than maybe he is. So patience is obviously key, but it doesn't sound nearly as bad as it was presented last night. And then when I first read it in the article, I think Perry's going to have, if he stays with it, he's got a chance to have, a good year and then step into next year and maybe be the guy next year. So I'd love to know your thoughts on that. I'd love to know your thoughts on the comments there. He was asked about Deuce's spring game, spring in general. Obviously, everybody wants to talk Deuce. Deuce got most of the reps, not most, basically all of the reps. And he had some ups and downs. He had pretty much what you expect. Let's hear what Hugh had to say about Deuce.
He did okay. He threw a couple late picks in the Skelly period. He hasn't done that all spring. He hadn't thrown the ball late. He has a real good instinct when the pocket is collapsing to keep his eyes downfield and extend plays and then either throw away or run. And he's done it well all spring. He and Jackson both have taken care of the ball well. So that was a little out of character for him, truthfully, with the days we've had in practice. I just hadn't seen that. So those were he immediately knew, and that's the great thing about him. After every play, man, he's giving you feedback, and so I thought he made some really nice throws, putting the ball. We talk about all the time, trust our receivers and put the ball in a position for them to make a play. There was some 3 or 4 in that Skelly period that were just really, really nice throws that gave our guys chances to make plays in the 50-50 contested catches.
Everything that I've heard about Deuce from this spring game and then his spring in general, the spring game was very emblematic of his whole spring as a whole, minus maybe some of the interceptions. I don't think he really threw any interceptions up until the last few practices, period. In other words, the stuff that jumps off the page was on display. The stuff that makes you go, wow, was on display. And the stuff that says, hey, he's still a freshman, was on display. The big story to me with Deuce has always been how far along he already is, and how surprising that is, and how eye-opening that is about the tools that he has and the game that he already has and the foundation that he has as he moves into, starting to really hone in and refine those tools and get better and better and better. His base, his floor is already way higher than everybody expected. Some of the throws from the highlights that I've seen are third-year college throws, third year or fourth year in college throws, like big-time throws. I talked about it last night. The throw he made to Cam Coleman on the back shoulder, that is an NFL throw. I mean, you're talking about a window that's as small as almost the size of the football, draped in coverage, and he puts it in a spot where only Cam Coleman can make a play. Some of the other throws were incredible. Both of the touchdown throws to Perry, even the one that, he maybe led him a little bit too far and Perry made the catch. That's what you have to do. You have to put it where the receiver can make a play. You have to you have freak athletes at receiver. You have some freaky athletes at receiver. Just get it in the vicinity. Give them a chance. Even if they have to lay out, give them a chance. They're probably going to make them more times than they're not. You can see a little bit. I think I can see, at least if you watched, maybe you can hear it if you're audio only, the excitement when Hugh talks about Deuce. You could see his eyes light up a little bit right off the bat, right when he started to answer that question. I think you could see his eyes light up a bit. We got 2 more clips. It's going to be all quarterback and depth chart related. We'll get to those in just a second. But before we do that, got to give a quick shout out to mybookie.ag. Use coupon code BARN, BARN, for a 50% deposit bonus. Give them $100. They're going to give you 50 back on top of it and free play to play with. Give me some of that. Any sports event you can imagine, there's a betting line for it at mybookie.ag. You can bet it multiple different ways. Parlays, teasers, whatever you can imagine, they got it. First half, second halves, all that stuff. You got NBA, you got Major League Baseball. There's some kind of game every single night. So definitely check it out. And they also have a casino if you want to go there as well. And then, hey, if you need a real estate agent in the Auburn area, give me a shot. Give me a shout. With a key agency, you can hit me up on Twitter. You can hit me up on Instagram. You can email me at krush, crush with a K, at thekeyAgency.realestate, whether you want to buy, sell, or build. There's probably nobody in town that's worked with as many builders as me. I can point you in the right direction there. And then, hey, if you just want to invest in Auburn, I got you covered there. So give me a shout. Love to help you and your family there. Let's hit up. Hugh was asked about he was asked about the blessing that it was to have 2 quarterbacks. Remember, this is something I talked about early on, that I think this is actually going to be a plus. Let's see what he talked about, just having 2 quarterbacks in spring.
I think that's been a blessing. I really, working with just 2 with Kent, Jesse, and myself, I thought was really nice. Their arms are probably a little tired because they got most of the throws for sure, but I think it was needed for both of them. I feel like we're way ahead of the game of them understanding our system and what we want to do. Both have high football IQs. Both are hungry to come in and study. And so them getting the majority of the reps, we have a lot of things we can teach from. And they got to see it firsthand because, again, you weren't splitting a number of reps. I thought it was very beneficial to us.
It was needed for both of them. I could not agree with that more, but in 2 totally different ways. I said this whenever it seemed like the quarterback situation thing was just not going to work out. You had to deal with Tanner Bailey for whatever reason. I hate it that it didn't work out. But then you're just going to have 2 scholarship quarterbacks. And Hugh said, I think they needed it. They needed all the reps. And I could not agree more, and they needed it for 2 different reasons. Jackson needed it because he needs as much time as possible to rep this offense, to get this thing down for the redemption after last season, to prove that I am the 5-star plus quarterback. I do have all these gifts. I am a good quarterback. Last year was not all on me. I need as many reps as possible. I could not be more happy that it played out the way it did, just because reps, man, are what get you. Repetitions are, I would say, probably, if talent is and coaching is 60 or 70% of development, I think just reps is probably the rest. I mean, just getting tons and tons of opportunities. With the pressure on this season, with the pressure on, keeping the momentum going, especially on the recruiting trail and getting out of just selling a vision, actually selling results, could not be a bigger deal could not be a bigger deal that Jackson got as many reps as he did. And then Deuce, for a completely different reason. Coming from, not banging on Mississippi high school football, but I mean, it's Mississippi high school football. I don't even think he was at the top classification of Mississippi high school football. If he was, forgive me. You're coming from there. You're a 5-star quarterback. You're going to be the guy eventually. You get to come in spring and get 50% of the reps. Holy cow. For the same reasons we just talked about Jackson, continuing to get reps and getting in there and getting some reps with the ones, getting some reps with the guys you're going to be playing with, and getting a lot of reps in front of recruits that are going to be able to play with you. Every recruit that came in, especially offensively, had like eyes wide when they would see Deuce. Getting rep after rep after rep. Man, he looks good. Would love to play with him. You got to put him on display. I think it was such a blessing. And I know we're learning. We're still learning this roster management thing as we go. And this last piece kind of talks about that. I know Hugh wanted to have 4 quarterbacks going into spring, but I don't think that's feasible. And I honestly don't think it's necessary. I don't know that you want to have only 2 every spring, but this was insanely beneficial. And we're going to talk about adding another quarterback. Again, you got Ashton Daniels coming in. Hugh's always said he wants 4 quarterbacks. He was asked about, hey, you've been saying you want 4 quarterbacks. Do you see another one coming in? Let's see what he has to say.
No, we have been discussing that every personnel meeting because I think the game is changing. I haven't heard the latest on the settlement, but it's going to be difficult you're going to have to model it after an NFL roster, I think, eventually, and that leans to, do we go with 3 and use the extra on a big somewhere, whether it be O-line or D-line. We haven't made that final determination yet. And, some of it will probably depend on what's available. I think it's probably going to be a pretty hard sell.
I think it'd be an incredibly hard sell. Bringing in a guy to sit behind essentially Jackson, Deuce, and Ashton Daniels. I mean, people forget about Ashton Daniels. I mean, starting quarterback at the Power 5 level for 2 seasons. He'll be here in, May or June after he graduates. 4 quarterbacks in this day and age, I think, is unreasonable expectations to think that you can carry that many. Back in the day, whenever it was high school recruiting and no portal and stuff like that, I can see that being ideal. But now, like Hugh said, as this thing evolves and you get your roster to where you have more of an NFL mindset, NFL teams don't typically carry 3 quarterbacks. I'm sorry, 4 quarterbacks. They typically just carry 3. You're going to have to model this more and more after an NFL roster and take that extra spot and look at, the more important positions like offensive line or defensive line. And I think that's what Auburn's going to do in the spring portal. He goes on to mention that, hey, you never turn down a pass rusher. You never turn down a big-time interior defensive lineman. We may be looking at a linebacker. You never turn down an elite cover guy. He kind of is telling you right there, I don't really expect to bring in another quarterback. Instead, we're probably going to use that spot a little bit more wisely in the trenches. And that's what I expect to happen. all in all, we talked about it last night. I think it was a good spring. I think there's a lot of pros, a lot of cons, a lot of things they're going to have to work on, and a lot of things where they're much further ahead. You know, people were concerned about the offense. One of the comments he said right there at the end was he was mentioning defensive players they may add, and then he says, I think we're pretty set on offense. That ought to make you feel pretty good. Now, depending on who goes into the portal, if you lose some guys to the portal, obviously you got to add those roster spots back. The portal opens on Wednesday. It's going to be a fast and furious. You already have one casualty, Terrence Love, and I give him mega props for giving it one more shot. He wanted to make it work at Auburn so badly, and Auburn has just completely nailed every freaking safety they've brought in since Terrence Love signed. I mean, those safeties, those freshmen are incredible. The ones you brought in, even Caleb Harris, the lowest rated recruit of your whole class last season. And then the guys you already have on, it's just an awesome, awesome room. So best of luck to him. I think he'll be able to find a good spot, and I think he'll be able to play. He's got all the measurables, maybe lacks a little bit of top end speed, but I think he's a good kid, and I think he's going to do well. We're going to be talking portal. We're going to be talking spring football. They typically label this time. It's probably not completely drivel season because you got portal and you got recruiting, but it's getting close to being drivel season. In other words, there's just not a lot going on in football, but we're going to make it happen, and we're going to be here every day talking about it and basketball portal and all that good stuff. So, guys, thank you for listening. If you like this video, like it. If you like this channel, subscribe to it. Don't forget, go to mybookie.ag. Take advantage of that 50% deposit bonus, and then hit it and win big, guys. We're going to be back again soon. It's another episode of the Top Button Podcast. Stay buttoned.
Thanks for listening, and drive home safely.